Morning, everybody. We're waiting for a handful of folks to log in here. We're running a couple minutes late, but we'll start the program in about half a minute here, just to allow the broadband internet to catch up with all of us and allow it to wake up this morning. So we'll start in a couple seconds here. Okay. I think we're ready to go. My name is Scott Sternberg. I serve as the Executive Director of the Boulder Economic Council. And on behalf of all of our investors, I want to welcome you this morning to an event that we feel is very topical as we sit in our rooms, either on premises or in our bedrooms in various communities where we're working today. And the topic for today's discussion is returning safely, perspectives on the return of Boulder's workforce. Before we start down that path, though, I want to recognize the people that have been working throughout this entire pandemic. So as the topic of our discussion today is returning to the workforce, we want to make sure that we recognize those essential employees that have been and continue working on premises. These are our healthcare professionals, our essential workers, our manufacturing workers, as well as a whole cadre of emergency management and critical employees that has kept our economy going. So I just want to say before this discussion, thank you to all of you who have been working on premises throughout this past year and a half. You have literally kept the lights on and literally kept our economy afloat. So as we talk about the group coming back to work today, we do so with that recognition and thanks to those who have been working throughout this entire year. As this is a Boulder Economic Council event, I thought I would, and it's also open to the public, I thought I would give a little bit of overview of what the BEC is before we get started with the program today. The Boulder Economic Council is comprised of about 60 investors that we use as a network to engage in economic development efforts throughout the city, as well as in the surrounding municipalities. And so we work on the retention and the recruitment and the reporting of Boulder's economy. We have a number of signature events that we provide throughout the year. We start off the year with the economic forecast, Boulder and Beyond, where we put our futuristic hats on and look at what our economy will be doing, and highly engaged with the lead school of business there at CU. And then we end the year with the Economic Summit in October, which is a networking event and talking about some broader issues that affect Boulder's economy. In the spirit of reporting, we issue a number of reports, one of which is a quarterly economic indicator report where we monitor in real time the economic indicators that are relevant to our community. We also publish an annual market profile that highlights the economy and the various market dynamics and the sectors of our economy, and we do that at the end of the year. And then on a biennial basis, we look deeply into our innovation community and publish our Innovation Ventures report. And I'm proud to say that as we sit here today, we have launched a refreshed version of our website, and it can be found at bouldereconomiccouncil.org. And you can go there, and this is a picture of the new refreshed homepage, and you can drill the various aspects of how to do business in Boulder, what it's like to live here, what our economy is doing, and of course, have access to presentations and case studies and reports associated with our economy in the publication page. So I encourage you all to take a look at our new website and drill through it and find out a little bit more about it. With that, I'd like to start the conversation with some background. These are two pieces of information that I think will frame the discussion for today. As we have touted in the introduction to this particular webinar, we have a interesting dynamic in terms of how many people come in, or how many people have been coming in and out of Boulder every day for work. And so the top graphic here shows that roughly 70,000 people pre-pandemic were transporting themselves into the Boulder economy for work. 20,000 of those are roughly circulating within our economy. That is to say, people who live in the economy or live in the city limits, work in the city limits, and about an efflux of about 19,000 people. You can see that that sits in contrast to what happens at Boulder County, and regardless, we are looking at obviously the impacts of the in-commuter traffic as time has gone forward. The graphic on the right, or the numbers on the right, show year-to-year growth figures, or not growth figures, or loss figures, in terms of the collective retail sales tax that each of the municipalities within the Boulder community have experienced. And you see that the city of Boulder has dropped off by by greater than 8% year on year. And that's a direct result of the lack of people coming into our community to work. But suffice it to say that we're very dependent on in-commuter traffic, both from a tax perspective, but also from a support perspective for all of our services that we provide in all of the small businesses, as well as driving the arts and cultural aspect of what we have come to love here in Boulder. And so the conversation today surrounding returning is certainly one that has legal ramifications. It has mental health and physical perspectives, but also has very strong economic perspectives as well. So as we go through the discussion here, just keep in mind that the in-commuter and the return to work dynamic for us is a multifaceted issue that we are tracking and that we are unique in our surrounding community. So with that, I know it's a little bit early for a conversation such as economic indicators and data and such. So I thought we would all wake up, and we're trying to use the polling function here in Zoom to parse the community that's out there today to try to understand where we all are on this journey to returning back to the office. So you should be seeing a screen that has just popped up. And we would like to know, before we start this discussion, how many days per week are you currently working at your place of business? That is, how many days are you going into your office or place of business to do work? So if you could click one of those and hit submit, we'll show you the answers here. And while we're tabulating the results, I would also like to give a shout out to my partner, Corinne Waldo, who is behind the scenes here and has worked tirelessly throughout this last year to support our businesses from translating public health orders into very practical solutions, and also served as a partner of mine to work on all of the economic related issues that we have faced over this past year. So thank you all for your work, Corinne, and hopefully soon we'll see the results of the poll. Okay, well, it looks like we are somewhat evenly distributed. About a third of us are still sitting in our bedrooms or in our bedrooms or couches or what have you and doing our work from home. We looks like we have a good portion of our community that is now going into work on a regular basis, and perhaps have been going into work on a regular basis, and an interesting distribution everywhere in between. So thank you all for this. The test has worked. I see now that we're all awake and ready to go. So thank you for that. And then just one last announcement, as is normal with Zoom, if you have any questions that you would like to pose the panelists, please enter those into the chat function. I will be monitoring those and providing those to our moderator today for discussion. Thank you all, and let's get started with the discussion. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's discussion. Giovanni Ruscitti is the founding and managing partner of Berg, Hill, Greenleaf, and Ruscitti, a very reputable law firm here in town, and has had just an enormous amount of commitment and support for both Boulder Chamber and the Boulder Economic Council over the years. Giovanni serves as the vice chair for the executive committee of the Boulder Economic Council, and served as a great sounding board for me and everyone here at the chamber when it comes to looking at the community writ large and understanding how we're operating and how our economy is doing. So thank you so much, Giovanni, for all of the work that you've done for the chamber and the BEC. And more timely, thank you so much for being our moderator today. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning, everyone. Looking forward to serving as the moderator of this panel. It's a great panel, great topic. It's not every day that we have a topic that impacts every single business, every single family, and that's a topic that we're talking about today. We want to do an interactive program today. So while we will be asking some questions, and each panel member is going to be doing a brief introduction, if you have questions, please put them in the chat feature, and I will be reading them as they come in and then trying to answer them. Again, our goal today is a kind of a morning fireside chat, although it's almost summertime now, but just to have a discussion. So what I'd like to do is have each panel member introduce themselves and talk about some of the challenges that they've faced and some of their plans, just from a high level perspective, and then we'll jump into some Q&A. When I start with Don. Good morning, Don.
Unmuting is always a challenge, as most of us know. Good morning. Nice to be here this morning. Looking forward to the fireside chat. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Lexmark's a printer company, and we provide printing solutions to customers around the world. We mostly participate in the large enterprise business. Maybe you're not so familiar with us, but certainly you're familiar with some of our competitors, Xerox, HP, Brother, Epson. Our operations here in Boulder are located at the north end of the IBM campus. At Lexmark and Boulder, we develop and manufacture two of the key consumables for printers, black toner and photoconductor drums. We don't build what you know as toner cartridges here in Boulder, but we ship our products to locations in Poland, Mexico, and China, and that's where they're assembled into what you know as a toner cartridge. So we have a blend of employees on our site. Some of them are essential. It's essential that they come into the workplace every day to operate and support our manufacturing processes. We have others. During COVID, we collectively refer to them as office workers. And those folks are able to accomplish some chunk of their work while away from the office. So going back to the beginning of the pandemic, Lexmark's met the criteria of a critical business, since we provide products and services to other critical businesses, pharmacies, banks, retail, and the like. So our manufacturing operations have been allowed to continue basically uninterrupted since the beginning of the pandemic. So we have had significant portions of our staff on site every day. So I would say we're pretty far along on our return to work journey, because we've been basically at work the entire time. We did shut down a year ago during the month of April, and that was very helpful because it enabled us to put various protocols in place to comply with state and local orders and to ensure our employees had a safe place to return to work. We did things, as many of you I'm sure have, with signage, temperature and symptom screening, capacity limits for conference rooms and other common spaces. We did modifications of workplace layouts to allow social distancing, among other things. So early in the pandemic, our office workers, like the majority of people in Colorado, were asked to work from home, and this was to work from home to the maximum extent possible. Later on, consistent with local orders, we relaxed that stance. We initially returned with most of our office workers a day a week, and we've since progressed consistently, again, with the orders, 50%, 75% capacity in blue. Now we don't really have capacity limits in clear, but we have not yet reached those levels of attendance. We're typically midweek days, around 30% of our employees, office employees, there on any given day. So we required employees to wear masks at all times inside our facility. An exception being if you're alone in a private office, of course. We've provided masks to all our employees, the surgical, those blue surgical masks. At first, we had a lot of difficulty finding masks, like we had difficulty finding a number of other products, including many of you maybe ran into issues with toilet paper and paper towels and things. But so some of the cleaning supplies were difficult to get. We did, fortunately, we have some colleagues that work in China, and so we were able to get a pretty significant supply of those masks for our employees from China. So as we're seeing capacity limits increase and changes to mask mandates for people who've been vaccinated, we're continuing to look forward to having more of our employee population back on site. Lexmark has recognized, and we had a little chat about this prior to the start of the panel discussion today, but many companies are recognizing that remote work, at least for employees who can, is probably with us to stay. So our company has worked on a new policy, the net of which we'll be asking our employees to work 3+ days from the office place and up to 2 days remotely per week. So that new policy is being put in place at the beginning of June around Lexmark. Some of the challenges that we continue to face, they're again related to remote work. Many people have grown very comfortable with working remotely, and it'll be stressful for them to return to the workplace. Many areas, as I'm sure you all have noticed, are loosening some of the restrictions, and some of us who have been dealing with COVID for the past year wonder if it's really prudent to be loosening the restrictions as much as we have. More COVID cases are likely to occur among our employees. We've had a number over the past year, but the virus hasn't necessarily disappeared at this point. It's a bit of a challenge to manage. If you've been vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask in the workplace. If you haven't been, you're supposed to wear a mask in the workplace. That's an interesting management challenge there. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we've noticed that it's incredibly difficult to hire employees. And there are a number of reasons, and we can perhaps talk about those later, but that's very difficult. And finally, to conclude, I'd like to give a big shout out to Corinne and the Chamber. You guys have been terrific with respect to helping keep us informed of the various changes that have occurred. And as we know, there have been many of those changes. So thanks very much to the Chamber. It's been a huge help to those of us in business. That's it for me.
Thank you, Don. Joe Steiskal with Hiltons on Canyon. Good morning. Would you like to give a brief intro?
Oh, I think you're muted.
Joe's still on mute.
There we go. How's that? Unmute. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Steiskal. I'm the general manager here at the Embassy Suites Hilton Garden Inn here in Boulder. You know, obviously, hospitality and the service sector was severely impacted by the pandemic from the start. We did close for about 45 days, initially on the end of March, and then reopen the beginning of May. You know, I think our biggest dramatic impact was going from about 175 employees prior and down to when we closed, we had 5 employees on staff. Everyone was placed on furlough. Now we've started the gradual rebuild. Obviously last year we moved things along and continue to obviously progress. And, you know, as he just mentioned, the task of really hiring and bringing back staff is really our challenge at this point. You know, placing social distance markers, signage in the hotels, screening for our employees, and then just really trying to enforce the mandates with our guests that are coming in from different states and other areas has been not too difficult. I mean, obviously the new changes that have been implemented are coming quickly and fast, and those are another new set of challenges that we're dealing with. But I think overall, we're definitely seeing an increase in visitors coming to the Boulder area, which is encouraging. And what we see on the outlook for the remainder of the year is positive. And so really it's just continue to kind of push along and see the rebuild of hospitality overall within the Boulder market, as well as just the greater Denver area. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Next, we have Gretchen Wahl, who I think this is probably the 10th or 15th panel we worked on together, but I've always been the moderator. She always has to answer the questions. Maybe one of these days we'll flip that script. Gretchen, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So I am Gretchen Wahl, community manager for Fnbo. We are a 166th generation community bank in Boulder, which I think is pretty remarkable. To be family owned for that many generations has been a wonderful thing. But I think the challenges we faced early on, things were changing so rapidly, and they would, you know, open and close, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do that, and trying to stay on top of all the changes that were happening at the time. Our banks, some of our banks stayed open 100% of the time. Now, saying that means that they were locked, but you would have to schedule by appointment, but you could come in and you could get into your safe deposit box, things of that nature. We had to change how we were doing business, where you would come to the drive-through to get a $20,000 cashier's check, which who in the world would have ever thought you could get a cashier's check through a drive-through? But we would have to do that. You'd have to send wires through a drive-through. And for those of you that know the risk with wires, I mean, that's just crazy, right? We never would have done that. But we had to do all sorts of things as a result of that. We had to keep employees moving from locations that were closed to locations that were open. We created teams where you had A, B, and C, and those were the only teams that would work together at a particular location on a particular day. The bank was very generous in that they did not stop paying people even if they were not working on a particular day. There were parents obviously had challenges with kids at home and trying to teach them. I know we're going to go into a lot of these details, but you know, I really commend our teams that were there 100% of the time throughout all of this. They're tired, just like many of us are. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. Next, we have Mark Sistatello with Employers Council. Who has kind of a unique perspective because he talks to lots of different employers. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Giovanni. Good morning, everybody. Maybe just a quick word about the council, Employers Council. People may not know who we are, but we've the council, we used to be Mountain States Employers Council, so some people may recognize us from that name, but we've been around for 83 years, offices downtown, Loveland, Colorado Springs, Salt Lake City, and Scottsdale. We have about 4,000 members, and essentially we're a group of attorneys and HR people who provide actually, I guess, a variety of services, but to employers, but generally kind of with my headset on, when people call us, their hair's on fire. So no one calls us and say, you know, we're having a great day here. You know, we just want to let you know. Everybody is calling us on these topics. I mean, and just to kind of give, you know, context, you know, here, you know, when we think of the issues that we're facing, I mean, we have national organizations like the CDC, we have the EEOC, we have OSHA, we have the state, we have local counties, and then we have organizations. We have national, the FFCRA, the acronym people may remember from 2020, but now is optional for 2021. We have our Healthy Families Act in Colorado, and in a way our Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. So we've I guess all of that comes into, gee, you know, how do you manage with all of that? It's a big Venn diagram. And it's like, well, how does this really affect my organization? So I think that it's complex, the issues, and it's nuanced. There's not really a silver bullet for every organization. You can see whether it's manufacturing or hotel or, you know, banking. There are organizations of all different type public employers that we work with every day. So this should be a good conversation. And you're right, Giovanni. I mean, we sort of span the globe here with issues that people call us on. So it's very interesting. If you'd see my desk, I'm a horizontal piler. I am just surrounded by paper. My wife comes in and she goes, "What a mess! What are you doing?"
Right.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's maybe a quick introduction.
Thank you, Mark. Scott, do we want to do the next poll question?
Sure, Giovanni. So, Corinne, if you could throw the next question up here. So this one is trying to understand your comfort level. So this kind of speaks to your personal view of how comfortable are you with the idea of returning to your place of business. So very comfortable. I'm okay with it. I'm a little freaked out by it. I really don't want to go back. So go ahead and enter your results here. We'll see what the group thinks.
And while you're doing that, again, as I said before, I'd like this to be very interactive. So if I asked a question or if we get an answer that prompts a question from the audience, please put it in the chat feature and I'll try and get to it as quickly as I can.
We thought about making predictions here, but I can't predict. Well, there we go. Looks like a number of us, substantially, 3/4 of us feel somewhat okay with returning back to work. So, great intel. Thank you all for participating.
All right, so let's jump right into this. I'm getting a couple of questions almost every single day, either from clients or, of course, internally as the managing partner of our firm. Some of them are much easier to answer, some are challenging. But I want to ask, I'll start this question for Gretchen and Joe. Given the new mask rules that just came out, what are you going to do with respect to your customers or clients who are coming into either the bank or to the Hilton? Are you going to require that they wear masks, show proof of vaccination? What is your plan going forward? Gretchen, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So we have removed all mandatory mask signage. We still have 6 feet signage. It is really based on your comfort level. So you can come into our banks now without a mask on if you are fully vaccinated. We will not be checking it's on the honor system as many people are doing. You know, we've watched the legislative information come out. We tend to go to the more restrictive. So if the CDC says one thing, but Boulder County says something else, you know, we'll adjust our decisions based on those parameters, I guess, as they come out. You know, safety is really the #1 concern that we've had through this whole thing of employees and customers. So we've been pretty conservative in allowing people to come into the bank and that sort of thing. You can return to work. We have a model that we've put in place. You can return to work if you're comfortable. If you're not, you don't have to. There's no requirement at this point to do so. You can walk around the bank without a mask on if you're fully vaccinated. We ask those that are not to wear their masks still, social distance, that sort of thing.
Joe, how have you handled that situation?
It's the same for us. I mean, we've taken down our mandatory mask signage, and we've placed new signage up, basically informing guests that we no longer will be policing masks. But those that are not vaccinated, we highly encourage that they continue to wear a mask. For our team members on staff, we're still requiring them to wear masks, and that's based on the guidance from the American Hotel Lodging Association as well as Hilton. And so we're doing that for our team members, encourage them to get vaccinated for those who are comfortable doing that. You know, and again, it's been an ongoing issue from a mask standpoint for a couple months now, especially with people coming from other states that have loosened restrictions quicker than Colorado has. And so for us, you know, I think it's kind of a welcome relief that we don't have to be the mask police, and that we can kind of relax those standards and not have to address people that are coming and going to put their mask on. You know, so, but I think from in the office standpoint, we've kind of separated everyone, so we don't have communal offices anymore. And those that are in the office can take their mask off. When they're out in space, we're asking them to put their mask on, just from a safety standpoint.
Mark, how do you handle situations where employees may not feel safe with this honor system that Gretchen talked about? Can you ask that people provide proof, either employees or customers coming into a place of business?
Well, according to the the executive or the, the orders from the state. So there's executive orders, and then there's the public health orders. You can, you can ask people, so, for proof, and certainly asking. So asking, the hesitation in my voice and when I talk with people is that you can ask, and it's oftentimes it's could you versus should you, as Gretchen talked about, is this do you do the honor system? We haven't faced, just because of our charter, we haven't faced a whole lot of questions about customers coming in because we're about the employee-employer relationship. But straight answer is that can you ask for proof, people to show your cards? Straight answer is sure you can, but just keep it at that. And you want to have like one person sort of inspecting those cards. You want to have your HR group doing it, because you start getting into a slippery slope if you sort of go beyond that. So you want to have a focal point for this, because it is, you have some protected health information here with those cards.
So we know we can, but I think the tougher question perhaps is should you. Don, have you faced your company kind of the tension behind, as Gretchen said, public health, safety, and welfare, and wanting to protect your employees and your customers versus privacy rights and not asking an employee if they've been vaccinated, or even perhaps more challenging, getting into political or social issues that get triggered by that question?
Good question. So we're in the camp of we will not be asking employees, for the things that Mark talked about. We're not asking. We're not requiring. And so as I mentioned a little bit ago, it does make it a little bit difficult with respect to, as Joe said, policing the mask policy. And, ours is not with people who come on our site, but rather with our own employees. So, talking about the spectrum of political views, we have left to right in our workplace, and some have been very resistant to wearing masks from the beginning. Some are resistant to vaccinations for either personal or reasons that they've heard espoused. So it's not an easy space to manage, and thus far we've chosen ask people be on the honor system and not to require, but again, highly encourage vaccinations. So it's challenging because we still live in America where we're free to largely do what we like, and I fully believe in that. And but there's if I had my druthers, I'd like everybody to be vaccinated in the workplace and make life a lot easier, but that's probably not going to be the case.
Mark, what are the pros and cons? Don just mentioned strongly encouraging employees to get vaccinated. What are the pros and cons from an employment law perspective on a strong encouragement policy?
Well, I think that it goes back to like, hey, look, we want to, I'll use OSHA. People have a general duties clause. People need to work in a safe, work environment. So you want to encourage people. I think that there's been enough that sort of the national narrative, celebrities and everybody getting on saying get shot, and organizations have really, for the most part, what we've seen, our experience has been people have gotten on board on the encouragement side. So that's great. And thinking about the spectrum of organizations that we deal with, some people it's medical. There's some places where, hey, look, it's a requirement. But it's when you start getting into some of this mandating, you start getting into the EEOC, and this is getting into this sort of nuancy area, which is, reasonable accommodation, because there is you get into issues of, look, some people can't get the shot because of an underlying medical condition. So when you start asking people, this is where you say, well, why won't you? You get into some bullying issues on both sides. But you do need to, any type of mandatory requirement requires that you also consider, hey, there are exceptions to the rule. This comes under ADA. So whether that's a health issue, whether that's a religious, issue, so you have to make an accommodation for those things. And this is where I think what we see in a lot of cases, that people say, look, we're not going to worry about that, so therefore we're going to sort of not make it mandatory because we just don't want to walk down that road. But there are other places, and this is not, honestly, this is not a clear, this sounds confusing, but I talked to an organization the other day that actually wanted to put red dots on the helmets of their employees who didn't get the shot. Like, there they are. Watch out. Like, but like, okay. So then you create this them versus us mentality. And I think that that's one of the things that people need to consider under this could versus should, is that there's enough divisiveness that you want to divide over something, like this. So the legal side, Giovanni, I think it really gets into the ADA, piece. But then on the other side, it's like, what kind of culture do you want to do you want to create here in your organization? We're going to trust people to do the right thing, or are we going to get in and really monitor and control this thing? And different organizations take different approaches to it.
Yeah, that's a very challenging question, especially when you start, it is a slippery slope when you start thinking about people's individual belief systems. I was traveling to Atlanta this week, and I was in a room with 12 people not wearing masks, and there was just that little bit of tension at the very beginning of wondering, has everyone been vaccinated? And that's just going to continue and continue. We have a question.
I think that,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Excuse me. I think that what we're facing too is like, we're a week into this, in a sense where the CDC guidance changed like a week ago, right? I mean, the governor signed the executive orders a week ago, the 13th of May, and so this was like a sudden change. So I think it kind of caught people by surprise, like, because it's like, hey, we got to wait a while. More people need to be vaccinated. And then, whoa, this changed up on people. So I think, we're in a week into it. I think that people are just thinking about what they, want to do, and some organizations are waiting. As to, they're not changing their policy. They're waiting to see like what happens. Let's give this maybe a little bit more time. Let's wait to the 1st of June and see what is going to go on, because the idea is, do we unmask only to remask? So that's another thing, because one of the executive orders just goes from May 13th to June 1st, which is another reason for, I guess, maybe a little bit of caution. But I sort of like the idea of opening things up. So that's, I'm on the opening up side of the equation here.
So we have a couple questions from the audience. Gretchen, I'll give you the first one. And we heard a little bit about this already, and that is, how are you internally monitoring which employees have been vaccinated?
Yeah, we are not on a company basis, but I think manager to manager, most people have to take time to go get their shot. And I've seen many people, if they get the 2 shots, that, hey, I'm going to stay home today, I just got my 2nd shot. So you can, in a lot of ways, I think you get the information without asking for it. And, it's interesting to me because as I was preparing for this discussion, you realize just how critical the managers are and have been throughout this entire process, whether it's from a mental health standpoint, just checking in with your employees, making sure that they're doing okay. You're getting in the information on when they're getting their shots, how they're feeling, did they have COVID or not, did family member. It's been up to managers to really stay connected to their people throughout this entire 14 or 15 months now. But I guess, the quick answer is we're not requiring anybody to check a box to say we're vaccinated. But I think as managers, we tend to know, and, it's not something that you share broadly, but within your own group, you kind of have a pretty good sense, at least that's what I have found.
We have another great question, and before we get to the question itself, one of the things that we've done in our firm, well, the question is, what is your advice for employees who are customer facing? Are you treating them differently from other employees who may not be customer facing? And a couple things. First off, going back to the question of monitoring, we also wanted to encourage employees, but there was pushback. We're lawyers, so we have a lot of very strong opinions at our management level about strongly encouraging anything. So what we did as an alternative, which I think has worked very well, is we offered PTO time for people who got vaccinated and if they had any symptoms. And I think ultimately had the same effect as opposed to strongly encouraging people. We just offered PTO, we ran it through our employment group and made sure that it checked all the boxes, as Mark says. But with respect to customer facing, we are still in our firm for any clients who are coming in, any visitors, any third parties, we are still checking temperatures. Now this is new, so we're only a couple days in. I don't know how long that'll continue. But Joe, for Hilton and for you guys specifically locally and then maybe nationally, how are you addressing this issue? Because I would imagine for hotels and also restaurants, this is going to be an issue going forward for a while.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And I think, for the majority of this, we were temperature screening our staff on a daily basis, privately coming down, temperature checking, basically just making sure that they weren't at a temperature or experiencing symptoms. And then really it was on a comfort level piece, and then just really them sharing with us if, they were feeling uncomfortable being around customers, then we would try to kind of remove them or limit their hours. Or if they were experiencing symptoms or thought they might be positive, then same thing, we were offering them paid time off until they were unsymptomatic or didn't have symptoms and they could return back to work. And that definitely was a roller coaster all of last year with just trying to fill the voids of people that thought they might have COVID and then they would be gone for a week or were in contact with someone with COVID. Thankfully for us, from a guest standpoint, very minimal exposure, or those guests that basically would return or call us and let us know that they had COVID after they departed or were experiencing COVID symptoms while they were in the hotel. And those were a handful of those through the duration of 2020. So I think we were very lucky in that regard. And again, I think it's really, from a vaccination standpoint, we're kind of in the same boat as well too. We're offering paid time off for those who are wishing to get vaccinated. And again, I think it's just more word of mouth. We're not encouraging people, giving them resources, providing them opportunities on where they can get vaccinated at, sharing that information. And then it's their choice if they choose to get vaccinated or not at that point. But it's definitely been, really bulking up on the PPP elements, having screens, plastic shields at our restaurant area, at our front desk, providing masks for associates, whether they want an N95 mask or just a general cloth mask. Those are the options that we provide. And then really it's just trying to keep sure that we have distancing from customers to the front desk and those contact areas, as well as in our food and beverage offering areas as well too, to make sure that the distancing is appropriate between the customer and our employees.
Mark, with respect to the fact that you see a lot of different employers, you seeing anything different from what Joe just laid out? Is that pretty much common from what you're seeing for everybody?
No, I'd say I will tell you that for the most part, employers have done a great job with this. They've, you need, obviously your employees, you need your employees, and they've been very, very conscientious about providing as safe a work environment as they possibly can. So I call it the big three, the mask, distance, hands, and signage has been there. I think that, employers don't seem to have a problem with putting that up. I think their issues are really more around, and they've been great about people working from home. It comes down to like this, sort of the vaccine, and are we going to treat people in our employees any differently? While technically you can. Again, do you want to do that? You can sort of put it out there and like, hey, we have a safe work environment. We have to remember, up until a week ago, the OSHA guidance, and it's still on their website, says, look, when somebody comes into the work environment, whether they're vaccinated or not vaccinated, you treat them the same. It's mask, distance, hands. It's kind of, and that guidance is still there. Now, they still refer to the CDC guidance, but they haven't taken down that line that's on the OSHA site. So I think we're waiting to see if that's going to is that going to change. But right now it's still there.
Right, Scott. Maybe this is a good time for our next poll question. It's a good transition.
Yeah, it is. So, Corinne, if you could launch this. So we talked a lot about workplace policy and management, and we'd like to know how well your organization is doing in terms of communicating to you what the policy is and what the guidelines are. So the question is, does your business currently have a stated return to work policy?
So while we're looking for that, I want to go to another question from the audience, which kind of fits into what your policies are and what they're going to be. But the question is, how do we propose to safely manage a staff that has a blend of known vaccinated employees and non-vaccinated employees while effectively supporting business operations? I'll throw that out to the whole panel, but I'll start with Don.
Well, I think we've already touched on it, Giovanni. I mean, our plan is, although we're one of the conservative ones that are keeping our mask policy in place now, and we're not inclined to go quite as far as what the state has signed up for at this point. But it's going to be that vaccinated people don't need to wear masks, and we encourage people who have not been vaccinated yet to wear masks in the workplace. And it's basically as simple as that. And we don't plan to have any particular enforcement activity taking place. So that's it. It's not an easy situation to manage, but we are going to count on the integrity of our employees to make it work.
And Don, I would want to echo, when we think about the Employers Council ourselves, what are we doing? And it's really what Don said. A memo came out from our human resource director, and it just, hey, if you're in the office and you're fully vaccinated, you may choose to remove your mask. But if you're not, we'd like you to keep your mask on. It's a pretty simple statement, and that's how we're choosing to manage it.
Yeah, we did the same thing in our firm, and we also went a step further and said, and even if you are vaccinated and you're still uncomfortable taking on your mask, feel free to follow whatever rules you want to, which seems to be working well. We're only 4 days in, so we'll see. I think my director also, she'll tell me later.
So it looks like we're split right down the middle. I just wanted to address hopefully people are seeing the results from the last poll question. So I think this speaks to the fact that there are a lot of moving targets at the federal, state, and local levels, and certainly those trickle into the individual organization level that makes setting a policy that's clear and concise challenging, as we've touched upon throughout this. So I think our poll represents the dialogue and the level of discussion that we've had.
So I want to switch topics a little bit. I think we're hearing from at least the panel members at the management level a strong either desire for returning to work or having an open policy to returning to work, which I think I've seen with our clients and internally in my organization as well. But we've seen some other issues with maybe non-management employees about a lot of anxieties of coming back to work for a lot of different reasons. And so this is kind of a broad question. I'll open it up for everyone, but I'll start with Gretchen again. The last 14, 15 months, we have seen not only the pandemic, but obviously social injustice issues, political divisiveness issues come into play in a way that we've never seen before, at least not in our generations. And so we've had a lot of employees deal with a lot of very serious issues, but dealing with it largely at home. So they're dealing with their work issues at home, their family issues at home, teaching issues at home, probably all their social issues at home. And so we've heard of and seen employees have a lot of mental health type issues that I think are maybe either starting or have been exacerbated by the issues. And so how should we deal with the importance of, I've said this before in these events, I think I said it at an event with Gretchen back in November, that we're human beings, we thrive on human interaction. How do we encourage that while at the same time dealing with all of these mental health issues that have emerged? And I'll throw it out to anyone, but I'll start with Gretchen first.
Really important question, really important topic. I think as managers, we have the unique opportunity to really stay close to our people and talk to them in a more empathetic way about how things are going, and being able to identify changes in their behavior or changes in how they conduct business and things of that nature, to try to, it's a slippery slope, right? You want them to feel open and willing to talk about things. But, for us, we've on a regular basis provided resources to our teams through email, links, things of that nature, documents to say, look, if you're struggling and if you're having trouble in any part of your life, here are the resources for you to go to help yourself. We can't force anybody to do those things, but you can highly encourage and give them the information. Or if you see that somebody is struggling in some way, you can ask questions. Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything that you need? Because I think it has been, I joke all the time, like, I'm married, I have kids, but we're not supposed to be together 24/7. Nobody wants that, right? I mean, we want to go to work and we want to be apart, and we haven't been. And everybody is just, there's days where we don't like each other. And what do you do? Because there was nowhere to go. Luckily we can joke about it now, but I think you just have to provide the resources, and you keep having to reinforce, there's places to go to talk and get help.
Yeah, Giovanni, I just to tag on to what Gretchen said, I think that in sort of the world that I deal with, we work with organizations that are very small, sometimes 2 and 3 employees, up to, tens of thousands. So, and maybe there's some of those types of people that are on the call today. So, everybody's amount of resources is different, is what I want to say. I think, but you want to care for your employees in the best way that you possibly can. So in a lot of we kind of know this, we all know this, but there's EAP that you can encourage your employees to use, remind them that those types of resources are available. So there's something formal. And I think if you have a medical plan, generally, most employers have an EAP. You mentioned sort of the role of the manager. I think the role of the manager is so critical. It's always
Hey, Mark,
been
why don't you just briefly describe an EAP for those who don't know?
This is an employee assistance program. So employee assistance program is essentially sort of phone support, at least initially. It's part of it, generally of a medical program where you can call in and get support, whether it's financial issues, emotional issues. It's sort of a helpline, essentially, for employees. That's what that is. I think like managers are extremely important so they can pay attention. And I know we're all zoomed out. We're Zooming today, right? This would have been a gathering in I guess in a year ago. But I think we've all sort of our group actually gets together a couple of times a week on Zooms just to sort of check in with each other. I think you have to keep your eyes open, your ears open. So I think it's really been challenging for managers, and just allow a little bit of grace here for folks. So just people are they're doing their best. You mentioned it, Gretchen. I think it was perfect. You got family. You've got, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening with them. With employees, especially those who are working from home. This was never meant to be. So it's putting an extra stress on people. So you don't have to relax your standards, but I think you can show a little bit of compassion here. So I know just a few thoughts. And there is time. I mean, the state has allocated time under the Healthy Families Act. For sick time. Now everybody's required to, have a certain amount of sick time, and that ability to use that sick time is pretty broad. Now, a lot of organizations already had sick time, but we know that we're now required to have, on an annualized basis, 48 hours worth of sick time that we give to people. So at least it's there. If it wasn't there before, it is there now, and hopefully people have far exceeded that as well.
Giovanni, I wanted to remind, and I think it was a chamber event where last year at some point, the hospital came in and did a presentation on just COVID and the numbers. But Julie Youngman, who works there, is a mental health specialist, and she provided some incredible resources, which I'm guessing if you go to the chamber website or the BEC website, you can find those. And how to have those conversations, and the information she provided, I think was just fabulous.
Yeah, no, that was great. And Mark, you just said something that I think is very important, that resonates with me. And COVID provided, well, all the events of last year provided a lot of negative things, but one of the positive things that I think it provided, from what I've seen, is the fact that we all were forced to show a little bit more grace and less judgment of situations. And if you can just remember that always, that people are dealing with situations in a very different way, because all of the events that we faced last year touch us differently. We had, and that presentation from Julie Gretchen was great. And we had somebody come into our firm on Saturday during our all partner meeting. I'll give her props. Her name is Heather Younger. Fantastic presentation. She talked about the act of compassionate leadership. And, as we're entering into this new this new norm, whatever that's going to look like, and we're all going to have a slightly different new norm. She talked about a couple of things that I'm a big believer in. One is your self-awareness and working on yourself first to be able to handle situations that are different from what we dealt with 16 months ago. But then she also said something that was very important, and this touches on what Gretchen said. You have to listen to your employees, and you have to see what's impacting them and be flexible. You have to be flexible. So Joe, you're the hospitality industry faced probably the biggest impacts over the last 14 months, starting to see it turn around. But did you guys have to deal with mental health issues or other health or stress or financial related issues for some of your employees, just because of the fact that you were closed for so long? And how did you deal with it?
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things, just listening to the employees and when we were kind of reopening and coming back to work, and obviously a lot of the line level associates as well as our managers have children that were at home that went through various stages of remote learning to at-home learning to back to going to school, and it was just very up and down, and it was very hard for the housekeepers of the world and the food and beverage folks to manage. What am I going to do with my son or daughter when I'm going to work or I want to return back to work? And then obviously there was nervousness that if I don't go to work, then I'm going to lose my job or not have a position. And so really trying to get a pulse check on that. And I think one of the things we did as a hotel for our team members was we have a large ballroom and no one is obviously having any kind of meetings in 2020. And we made the decision that, let's open this ballroom up, do social distancing of 6 feet. And if housekeepers or managers want to bring their kids in and do remote learning from work and they feel more comfortable to have them here so they can be supervised instead of leaving them at home alone, then that's what we did. And we did that for an extended period of time where the kids would come in, we would temperature check them. We had tables 6 feet apart. They had computers with them, or we provided laptops and they were able to learn, and we had someone sitting in there supervising while they did their classwork remotely from the hotel. And I think that was just something that put their mind at ease to know that, I'm working and I'm providing a wage or a living for my family and I can do my work, but know that my child is here and there's someone there that's watching over them or at least just supervising them and keeping it fun and interactive for them as well too, because I have 4 kids that sat at home for the last year and never brought them to work, but obviously I've seen the impact of being at home for a full year and what that's done to them, just being cooped up and basically isolated amongst themselves and not being able to be with their peers. And so I think that really helped. And I think the second thing that we really focused on from a management standpoint is just really making sure people were comfortable taking vacation. I mean, I think from the hospitality sector standpoint, a lot of us were thankful that we were the ones that were still kept on and had our positions and our job. And so then there was that guilt of, well, I don't want to take vacation because I'm one of the few that are still here. And really kind of sitting down with folks and kind of saying, I can't force you to take a vacation, but we need to get vacation scheduled between now and this time frame. And then we did at the beginning of this year, between January 1 and March 1st, everyone needs to take some time off and take a vacation and unplug, and everything will be fine while you're away. And really then making sure that they came back and had a break away from the business, because again, we were wearing multiple hats and doing multiple jobs for an extended period of time. And there was a real burnout fatigue that happened over the last course of that year, and just what we had to do from an operations standpoint. But I think those are some of the things. And then again, as you guys alluded to, the Eap program, which we have and are big believers in, just really making sure that was promoted far more than it was in the past, and just so that people knew they had resources out there that they could reach out to support them with whatever challenges they were, facing, from either unemployment to counseling issues, to any of those things, that they can have those resources at their fingertips. I think were just a few of the things that we really kind of focused on.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And Corinne, thank you. If you look at your chat feature, everyone, Corinne has dropped in some links on this very specific issue that I think is one of the most, if not the most important issue that we're going to be dealing with going forward. And I see we have a question from an old friend. Good morning, Cliff. Good to see your name again. Hope you're doing well in your new venture. So Cliff asked a very important question. I think the GNP of our economy, it doesn't matter where you are, is largely derived from small business. You'd be surprised, I don't know what the most recent statistic is, but I remember when I was just getting my undergrad in economics and my MBA, it was something like 75% is derived from small business. I think that's probably still the same. But the question is, Colorado's economy recovery will depend mostly or largely on the success of small businesses. And I think that's also true for Boulder. So I'll start with Don on this, but how well do panelists see small business clients or small businesses starting to make the adjustments to new state orders, changing consumer behaviors, and then ultimately what we're going to end this conversation with this morning is a hybrid work environment.
Of course, Lexmark is a big business. We have 8,500 employees or something like that worldwide. So, you know, maybe we're representative of the smaller group that contributes to the economy. But you know, I try to pay attention to what's going on here locally, and you know, I do think that it seems to me, based on activity out and about, you know, it took me about 5 minutes. I live out near 76th and South Boulder Road. It took me about 5 minutes to get out onto 75th yesterday. So it seems to me that you know, there's a rebound, as we talked a few minutes ago about the traffic. So it seems to me that businesses are figuring out how to deal with things now that we're toward the tail end of COVID. And I think even a bigger piece is that consumers who may have been reticent to go out, including myself and my wife, are beginning to feel safer to go out and go into businesses where we hadn't for, you know, a number of months. So it feels to me that like things are rebounding. I don't have any data to back that up other than observation, but it seems like it's happening. Giovanni?
Gretchen, how do you see it for some of your smaller local customers?
There's no question it's been really hard on businesses. And, you know, we, through PPP, really saw it because, you know, the first round, excuse me, people were just panicked because they didn't know what was going to happen. The second round was as complicated as the first round because there were a lot of changes that happened. And I think the biggest concern for people is how are they going to get people back into their stores and things of that nature. And it's starting to happen as people become more comfortable. And Mark was right. That change to no masks and was so surprising that I think people are really trying to figure out what does that mean. And I think the public in general is like ready to go. And then you've got supply chain issues where you can't get the bottles that you need to put the things you need into it. So I'm sorry. I think there's still concern out there, but I think people in general and business owners in general are ready for business to come back in and to get back to what they love, which is selling stuff to people, you know, at the end of the day.
So let's switch topics a little bit here, and then we'll do our last poll question. We've heard a lot about hybrid workplace. We've heard a lot about flexible, but one of the problems when you break out of the norm, and sometimes the norms are what I call sacred cows that need to be let go of and put away. But you know, one of the things that I think working in an office that has collaboration and teamwork it's really an important part of culture. So when you have a business, and every business of course should strive to have a positive culture, but how do you deal with keeping team cohesion or culture between people working in the office and at-home individuals? And Don, I'll start with you again, given that you are one of the larger organizations and you're probably going to have a pretty good mix. How do you deal with that culture issue?
Well, it is tough. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, a group of people that have been in the workplace every day, nearly. And, you know, of course, our other group who's been maybe away from work a number of days. And it definitely has created a strain with relationships between those who've been at work every day and those who've been remote. So I'd say that's been probably the biggest impact on our culture. Is it feels like we have two groups of people, and the view, whether it's well, it's probably largely not accurate, but the view of those that are at work every day is that many of the rest of us are on vacation. And while I know that's not true, because I'm on Teams meetings all day, every day, trying to keep up with what's going on and manage the situations. But I would say getting all of us back in the workplace at least a few days per week will significantly help that issue. That's what I see as our biggest impact to culture, as we feel like we're no longer one group, but two separate groups.
And I want to go back to Cliff's question. We had some information posted in the chat about manufacturers and size of manufacturers. 81% of manufacturers in Colorado have fewer than 20 employees, and those companies grew 1.2% in 2020, which apparently was the only economic sector to grow during the pandemic. And it looks like the manufacturing sector, which most people don't realize is a big part of Colorado's economy and a very surprising large part of the Boulder County economy, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago when I joined EC. But that looks like small companies and specifically manufacturers are poised to drive economic growth. And thank you, Tom, for posting that. Sticking with that last question about culture, Joe, for an organization that also is a national organization, but you have local presence here, have you guys implemented any special techniques or tools to keep culture at a high positive level?
Yeah, we have for sure. And I think, again, Hilton does a great job nationally, really trying to make sure that they're doing rallies, even though it's virtual, trying to be consistent with that and doing that on a pretty frequent basis to kind of get the teams together across the country with all the hotels, and doing a Zoom presentation hotel by hotel, but all joining a live stream of that, and really trying to motivate, all hotels across the country and showing stats on the rebound of the hotel sector, I guess. And then just here individually in the hotel, again, just really trying to make sure that we're doing things to kind of keep the team motivated, because I think, again, we're kind of in that same boat, smaller group of people, but we do have folks that work remote, as well as the operational team who's here on an everyday basis. And so really trying to keep those teams connected throughout the duration of this, and make it fun and spirited, and also, from a recognition piece. And I think that's been something that our team has done a good job with, is doing a monthly recognition for different managers, hourly associates, and really trying to make sure that, we didn't lose sight of that, even though we've made obviously significant cuts because things have gone backwards from a revenue standpoint. Highlighting and keeping that culture alive and that spirit of hospitality alive here in the hotel, I think is critically important to not lose sight of that, and get ground down by, a pandemic that's been unfortunate, something outside of our control, but making sure that we keep the spirit alive here in the hotel, I think is something that we've done with, rallies for the team, different gifts that we've done throughout the duration of this, and really just trying to make sure that we're keeping it fun when we can, all things considered.
Yeah, those are great things to do for everybody. Scott, maybe this is a good time for our last poll question.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so we want to now sort of pivot into what will this is sort of in the spirit of the new normal question that we've been facing with. So we'd like to know in the long term, which statement best describes your view on what your ultimate workplace condition will be. So as best as you can, put on your fortune teller hat and say, a year from now, perhaps, what will be your working environment? So go ahead and submit those questions, and we'll look at the response to the last polling question in a second.
Can I just say something on culture, Giovanni? And this is more of I don't know that any company at this stage will know the full impact of not having everyone in the office on culture. I think over time, we will better understand what that impact was. As I have friends in different industries, the amount of people leaving jobs to go to other jobs is pretty phenomenal right now. And I think this last year, it's just people are feeling like I need a change. I need to do something different. I mean, our retail, we have 25 to 30 positions open right now on our retail side. We're having a hard time finding employees. And I think over time, we're going to see the impact long-term of what it did to our culture by not being together. I think, you know, bringing people back together will really help the mental health issues that have arisen over the last year, because people need to be with people. And I don't think that I'm too far off base when I say that.
No, I agree.
Gretchen,
I've said that before. We need that interaction, collaboration.
yeah, Gretchen, I agree. And Giovanni, I agree. I think that this puts a strain on so many different systems. And every time, I guess, over my history, when you do an employee poll or a survey, number one or number two on those things is communication can be better. So in good times and bad times. I think this actually emphasizes that. It's like we always give a nod to better communication. I think now's the time for organizations really to communicate, you know, what the goals are of the organization, how we really work together, and sort of that care for each other. And I think people changing jobs that's a phenomenon, because it's like, how do you interview? I mean, we're interviewing people, and you interview people via Zoom. You orient people doing Zoom. I mean, to create kind of you have to pay attention to the culture, or it'll leak. So I don't know. It's just a great point. I think you just have to really focus on trying to maintain it, but also recognize there's a dynamic that this has the potential of changing things up, but stick to the things that are really core to the organization.
And those are basic, right, Mark? They're transparency, communications, you know, town halls, which we would have never done pre-pandemic. We did them a lot. And what I learned from at least our workforce is they probably got tired of seeing me on Zoom, but they loved to hear what we were doing and why we were doing it. So I think that hopefully that's another thing that's going to continue going forward.
And maybe just one thing. I think that people are anxious to come back. I mean, you're going to find, somebody said a long time, don't let the exception become the rule. And there's going to be people that, you know, that are just don't want to come back. But I think a lot of people do want to come back, at least in some measure, because they do want that interaction.
So you just said something about the exception becoming the rule, and maybe Scott, you can give us the survey results, because I think 26% thought that what I think many people think might be the exception will become the rule.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, looking at the data maybe a little different way, that, you know, 90% of us think that it will not be nearly close to the way it was before, you know, so we are looking at a, you know, very much of a behavioral and then potentially now an economic shift in terms of how our workplaces how our work environments are impacting, you know, the local community. So thank you all for all of your support with the polling questions today. I think it's really intriguing to look at the results.
So in the few minutes we have left, I do want to talk about a very important issue. I know our school year is about to end, but childcare concerns is a big issue. So with not knowing what's going to happen with summer programs and camps and perhaps shortened school weeks going forward, the inability to vaccinate 11 and under, and I think I saw that the highest percentage by group of new cases were children, at least as of the last time I looked at the statistic. This issue is going to continue to impact all of our workforces. How are we going to deal with childcare issues? How are we going to deal with, if your organization is one of those that's going to allow people to work from home 1 or 2 days a week, how are you going to schedule that? So how do you navigate these challenges? And for this last question, I'll just leave it up to the panel, and please all just jump in, and whoever feels like going first.
You know, I was just going to say that this summer, we're not out of the woods. I mean, there's so many summer programs that have been canceled for those that have children, finding childcare and figuring all that out is going to be a challenge. And I think there's still a lot of flexibility that's going to have to take place until the school year starts. And let's just hope that the school year starts normally. I don't know that there's any standardization to that at this point.
Real lot of flexibility. A recurring theme here has been that it's really important for managers to be in tune with their employees' needs. And we'll be flexible, although we do want people back in the workplace, at least part-time. We'll be flexible with people who have, particular issues. And it's just the way we'll try to do it is on an individual basis. As they have issues, they can work with managers to figure out what's most appropriate. So.
Yeah, and the same. I mean, for us, we're obviously working at modified schedules, alternative work hours, just to try to accommodate, childcare needs from a line level associate standpoint, as well as for managers as well.
Yeah, maybe two things. We have found from our surveys that a lot of people don't take their vacation because they're afraid, perhaps, of taking vacation time. There's a lot of reasons for it, but there's a lot of organizations where the balances of vacations are pretty high. So over the summer, I think encouraging vacations, depending on how long it lasts. The executive order goes through as far as the public health emergency time. If people need to take that time off, that goes essentially to mid-July. So there's some paid time off that employees can take if it's COVID related, even if it's related to their children. So there's just a couple of things. I agree. This isn't going to go away. We just have to be mindful of, I guess, the legal side of it and try to be as sympathetic as we possibly can.
Well, with that, thank you to all the panel members. I think that was very helpful. I think some common themes to take away. Certainly the biggest one is grace and compassion for everyone's situation, and the word that we heard a lot of is flexibility. So I think that was a lot of really basic things to remember that sometimes we lose sight of in the business world, but just really helpful to see. Before I turn this over to John, I want to again acknowledge Corinne and Scott for an amazing job with their leadership, putting together these programs, being involved with the BEC for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years now. I don't remember how long it's been. You guys have done an amazing job. So thank you for this program. It's very timely. And thank you for allowing me to participate again. I appreciate that. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to John Terry, who's the president and CEO of Boulder Chamber, and talk about leadership. John is everywhere, even during the pandemic. He's really doing whatever he can to help big businesses, small businesses, and a lot of the things that we talked about today, he takes very personal to heart and has shown an incredible amount of leadership. So thank you, John, and I want to turn it over to you.
Oh, you're great. I appreciate those kind thoughts, Giovanni. I will turn it back to you. First of all, I'll just commend this panel. It was mesmerizing. It was interesting. I've become an astute observer of Zoom, and you can see things drop off in the participant section. This did not drop off. Folks were paying attention to what was being said, and obviously, we're thankful to the BEC membership for their investments that allow this type of programming to occur through the BEC and the Boulder Chamber. So just thank you, and tip of the hat to our BEC investors. Just a couple of quick observations from my end. First of all, it's so interesting. I mean, obviously, this is a very murky period in our handling of the pandemic and the transition back to work. And I was reflecting that we're recording this presentation. I can't wait for a year down the road to re-look at this presentation and think about what we were assuming were the conditions that were going to occur going forward, and the concern that we had for our workforce during that time, as well as our business operations. So for posterity, this was a very important conversation, but it also helped us direct for the future and for going forward at this very challenging time. And the other reflection I have is just the passion that the folks here on the panel, but just given the numbers of folks who hanged in for this conversation, it's a mix. We're concerned about our businesses going forward. We're concerned about our economy. But we also have a great deal of concern and passion for the welfare of our workforce. And that, to me, resonated through all of your comments. And I just appreciate that. And to me, that speaks to the type of leadership that we in our community respect and know that's a key to our success. So I commend all of that concern and respect for the needs of our workforce. And then finally, this is a BEC program. Why? Because it's so critical to our community, to our economic welfare, that we can allow our employees to come back to the workplace. It's important because it helps to lift our businesses through culture, through operations. But also we know so many small businesses depend on the commuting workforce to drive their business success, whether it's a restaurant, retail, service, what have you. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a community to accommodate that return to work, that we're following all the right procedures that support the workforce, and that we're doing everything we can from a legal perspective to make sure that we're accommodating the needs of our businesses. So I think this panel discussion is exactly the kind of conversation that we need at this juncture. And I thank all of you for the panelists for their comments, and I thank the folks who attended for their attention to this important issue. So I hand it back to Scott to close out.
Great. Well, John, thank you. Right at the top of the hour, seasoned professional when it comes to Zoom, certainly demonstrated it this morning. So thank you all for attending. For those of you who are not BEC investors and want to join in these kinds of conversations and be more involved in the community, BoulderEconomicCouncil.org about us. You can send Corinne and I an email if you'd like to participate going forward. But with that, thank you so much to Giovanni, and thank you to all of the panelists, and also to the support structure at the Chamber and at the BEC that makes these kinds of events as enriching as they are. So thank you all, and have a wonderful day, and return safe.
Thanks, Scott.